Travel Weekly webcasts in partnership with the PC Agency, the travel consultancy amplifying luxury brands and boosting sales through expert PR, trade representation and dynamic marketing.
So hello again everyone, and welcome to the latest in our series of webcasts that we're bringing you from Travel Weekly as part of our Roadmap to Recovery series as we navigate our way through this pandemic. And I'm very much delighted to welcome this morning Richard Sofer, who is of course the Commercial Director at TUI. So good morning Richard, and thank you for joining us. And I have to say it's the first time really that we've spoken to anyone from TUI in the last sort of 13 or so weeks. I know that's because you'll have been very busy. Clearly for a business your size, the scale of what we've been through has been massive. So perhaps you can just give us an outline of what the last 90 days has been like for TUI.
Yeah, sure. Hello, Lucy. Yeah, pleased to be here. Good to be talking to you. Yeah, I think it's fair to say the last 90 days have been very, very busy. I think probably everyone that's been working in the industry would agree with that. And I think particularly when you go back to as the crisis started, and it seems like such a long time ago now, you know, it was a very moving and a very fluid position. You know, each day was quite different from the next. And, you know, we needed our teams to be at their very best to make those decisions in very, very difficult circumstances. And I guess obviously the disappointment is at the moment not being able to operate and not being able to take customers on holidays, which is clearly sad for the industry. But, you know, the great news is that we're, you know, restarting our program, which is what I'm really pleased to talk to you about today. And therefore, the vast majority of the last 90 days has really been dealing with, I guess, the challenges of not having a fleet of aircraft flying and managing the workforce and dealing with the challenges for customers. But particularly, it's been focused on restarting our program, making sure that we can have safe holidays for our customers, work with destinations, and really work through on a phased basis how we can get customers back in the air and flying and having fantastic holiday experiences. So it's been tough, it's been busy. I've been inspired by our teams and how hard they've worked and the lengths that they've gone to. But yeah, really looking forward now to getting people back on their holidays.
Okay, well, look, obviously you've announced some of that this morning and we're going to talk about that in just a bit. But if you don't mind, I just want to just look back a little bit. Clearly the big story well, it's still ongoing, but certainly at the start was all around the cancellations. I know you might want to put some numbers on how many bookings you had to deal with. But in terms of that whole refund credit note versus rebooking issue, you did come under a bit of flack. You know, you had Which and Money Saving Expert, just to name a couple of people who were fairly critical of how you handled it. And I know things changed as you went through. Everybody was trying to get to grips with it at the start, and I know you adapted what you were doing as you went through. But how do you feel you handled the whole cancellation and refund process?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say clearly it was unprecedented, and as I said, you know, the situation was moving quite quickly at the start. I think, you know, we've held our hands up and admitted where maybe we didn't always get it right, and my boss Andrew, you know, sent a very sincere note to all our customers, you know, to explain that. But I think we put a huge amount of effort in to, you know, rectify that situation and make sure that customers have got channels and opportunities to speak to the teams where they need to. And with the new web form that we've put up online, you know, they've got a mechanism that hopefully is pretty simple and people can go on and fill in. And therefore, we've been able to actually administer all of those refunds that the customers are asking for. You know, to put it into context, throughout the kind of 2.5 months, we've seen about 1.5 million customers' holidays had to be cancelled. So, you know, just huge volumes that, you know, really could never have been foreseen. And the added challenge that you've had with not being able to have the main offices open, not having the retail stores open, has therefore made it very, very difficult for our teams to be able to deal with those customer contacts. Now, fortunately, we have a pretty good IT network, so we've been able to have as many people as possible working from home to serve those customers, and we've been increasing those numbers over time, and clearly as people can start to return to the stores, that will help. So Yeah, I think on balance, we did a good job in the circumstances, given all the challenges that were being thrown at us, and the size of the challenges that we were facing. And we've had to rebuild systems, and we've had to kind of create new processes in that kind of situation to allow customers to kind of deal with that. And I think, sorry, just on the point around which, I think they were a bit unfair with some of their commentary to us. We'd been working with them, providing them some of the information, and it wasn't maybe always portrayed in the way that I felt was fair. And I know Martin Lewis has very recently been, on the TV and on his program to talk around. And actually, I think the feedback most recently has been very, very positive with how we've dealt it, or at least how we've been able to rectify the situation.
Okay, all right. And what percentage of your bookings did you manage to save in terms of, get them to rebook for next year versus actually having to refund?
Yeah, I think it's really positive. So we're talking about 40% of customers have actually taken the refund credit note. Clearly, we've given customers incentive as well. We've given them a very generous 20% top up on what they've paid. And so about 40% of customers have used that to rebook their holiday, and the balance have kind of been processed for a refund.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just specifically, a couple of the things that I think the accusations were, one, that you just made it very difficult and time consuming to get to that, to work out how to get the refund. And I don't know whether that was because you just needed time, because because of the volume that you talk about.
No, it certainly wasn't purposeful to slow down the process. It was clearly, we were dealing with, as I said, a huge weight of volume of calls, that arguably we never could have foreseen and projected it would have needed to deal with that level of volume. It was just really down to the sheer volume. But like I said, the teams have worked incredibly hard. They've managed to get through all of those early kind of bookings. Customers are now within 2 to 3 weeks of having their requests dealt with. So I think, we're now in a place where actually the time that we're able to deal with customers' requests is really kind of reasonable. So, it's been challenging. It's been really tough. And, I thank the customers that they've kind of bear with us through that, and we're now past the worst of it.
And have you managed to deal with the refunds that were for direct customers in the same way as ones through travel agents? Because there has been, we've had some agents saying, oh, customers that have gone direct have got their refund much quicker than through a third-party retailer.
No, I don't believe so. Obviously, there's a slightly different route for communications. But I don't believe that there's been any real delay in either the agents, third party or otherwise, getting those refunds. Again, at the early stages, it was very challenging just because the volume of calls that we were dealing with. But, that's settled down now. So, yeah, that shouldn't be an issue.
Well, actually, we also had, on the other flip side of that, we also had some agents saying that they felt that there was a feeling that perhaps TUI was more interested in working with travel agents during this period. I know obviously you had your own shops closed, and I know people have been working from home, etc. But would you agree with that you've sort of really lent on the independent agent sector a bit more, and would that be something that we would see continuing?
I mean, it's great that they're feeling positive about the contacts that they've had with the team. Our team will always aim to deal very professionally and proactively with all the key partners that we work with. I don't think there's really been any different treatment, if you like, for those agents and those partners than there otherwise would be. It's just the teams have hopefully dealt with them in a very professional way. And going forward, I think, from a distribution point of view, obviously, we have a very successful, highly direct sell model, but third-party agents have always been, and I'm sure always will be, a very important part of that distribution. And of course, your distribution really is driven by customers. Customers want choice and want different ways in which to access and buy the holidays. So, I see third-party agents and our key partners, for a long time being a really important part of our business, as they always have been. And I guess, it takes a long time for consumers' behaviour to change, and that's really what drives those differences. I don't suspect there will be a huge change post the coronavirus, but we'll have to wait and see.
Okay. All right. Well, look, I do want to get onto the restart. That's very important. But just to clear up a couple of final things, because I wouldn't be doing a service to our readers if I didn't. We had a few agents saying that they were seeing price parity, which has obviously been an issue in the past, but they were happy with that. But they were saying they couldn't get the same low deposits to offer to their customers on TUI bookings. And they were saying that would have been, that was quite a barrier because you were offering much cheaper deposits online. So I don't know if you've got anything to say on that, Richard.
Yeah, I guess just on the deposits. So from time to time, we have some promotional deposits, but I guess most recently we've had a very low or a zero deposit, but that's been based on our direct debit payment facility. Now, unfortunately, that's only been available online. So unfortunately, our own stores and therefore agents wouldn't be able to have accessed that. So that could be causing one of those differences. And therefore, we do have key partners, and they would have access to the very low deposit scheme, which would be in the kind of £50 region previously. So again, those key accounts would have had access to that, and those are the key partners. If they weren't one of those key accounts, then they would have been in the kind of standard deposit. So, but there's not been any change in that treatment. That's always been our kind of distribution model.
Okay, and then on just keeping on pricing, I guess. People with these refund credit notes wanting to book again into, to rebook the same holiday, but in the future, we had some reports which were picked up by Which, etc., saying that they couldn't book, the equivalent holiday because actually you'd put the price up into next year. So what's happening with pricing? Is that a fair comment by them, or was that just one-off? Or
no, I think some of the comments from Which I think were misleading. They had data from us that showed the real comparable pricing. I think unfortunately some of the examples that Which used, they'd used different room types, which of course there can be quite a price difference from a standard to a kind of deluxe room, etc. And also there were some differences where you've gone from an infant to a child, so of course you don't have a seat in the first booking, and then you have to pay for it for
okay,
so
you're saying they weren't comparing like for like?
No, and I think in terms of general pricing, there's been no specific price hikes by the team. They're working very hard to keep our holiday prices as low as they can for customers, but obviously taking into account accommodation cost inflation and changes in foreign exchange rates. And I think on average, if you look at where we are August on August, so the peak month, you're talking about only a 5 to 6% increase in prices. So the incentive that we've given to customers where we've had to cancel their holidays, obviously more than covers that. And, we've got a program of, I don't know, maybe 30 million package holidays on sale when you look at all the combinations. So it's clearly very complex. So, if there are the odd one or two examples, that's where the team work very hard to try and keep those prices as low as they can.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the exciting stuff that you really want to talk about. Let's talk. You've announced previously, we've written that you're planning to restart on July the 10th. Is that still the date that you're aiming for? Or
yeah, July the 11th. Actually,
the 11th. Okay. All right. So tell us about your restart plans then, and we want to know where. We want to know how.
Yeah. So clearly at the moment, it goes without saying there is still quite a lot of uncertainty, particularly from a travel advice point of view. And I'm sure we'll come on and talk about that and quarantine. But the really exciting news is, yes, we are announcing the restart to our program. So really exciting. We've been building up to this for many weeks. Teams have been working very hard to get us into a place where we've got a program where we can start to take customers back on holiday. We're going to be starting with a relatively small program initially, just to 8 key destinations across Greece and Spain, including the Balearics and the Canary Islands. And that's going to start from the 11th of July. And the first couple of weeks will be a relatively small program. You're talking less than 10% of what we'd normally be operating. But then towards the end of July, and then across August, and then into the balance of summer, we're then going to be ramping up the volumes that we're going to be flying customers. And I'd expect us to be flying up to about maybe 40 to 45% of the program that we would have been operating in normal circumstances. So really exciting news. Great to be getting customers, back on their holidays, and I'm really pleased to be sharing that with you today.
I know you say there's still, we've got the quarantine in place, and we're obviously hoping that will be lifted. You can comment on that, but there's still the Foreign Office advice, which is, advising against all but essential travel. Is this dependent on that being lifted as well? And is it obviously dependent on some air corridors being put in place. So just talk us through these, because I know it's all very well saying you're going to do it, but there are some obstacles, aren't there?
Yeah, there are. And I guess, unfortunately, the UK government's position, particularly with the FCA advice, has not been helpful. There's been better clarity in other European countries where at least they were given lines in the sand. So just having or not having a date and just having it under review makes it very, very difficult to plan. And clearly, ourselves and other airlines and other operators, you need a bit of a lead time. You need a ramp up to be able to get your operations ready. And I guess we've got to the point where we are feeling confident based on what we're hearing from conversations within government that we are very, very close to, I guess, the FCA advice changing, and therefore these air corridors, and agreements being made. And therefore we feel the timing is right now to put our program out there to give customers the certainty. We've tried to give customers a great deal of flexibility across the summer period, so they felt like they had choices. And now is the right time to really put down what we think is a program that we will be able to operate based on all of the information that we've got. But yes, of course, it is still subject to the FCA advice changing and these air corridors being agreed. So I guess with all of that, you do have to caveat a little bit that we will need to keep watching how this develops. But like I said, it's great to be able to put with a great level of confidence a program now that customers can enjoy.
And I mean, you talk about your hearing in government. I am sure you must have a fairly I guess that you've got their ear. You're a big player. You're an airline, you say, but we've heard very little from TUI in terms of any lobbying. We've had BA and Virgin and EasyJet, and they've been going and doing legal challenges, and we haven't heard from TUI. So what has been your position and your sort of lobbying role? What have you done to try and help the industry get back on its feet and get the government to listen to us?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Lucy. Given obviously the size of our organisation, that's meant that we've had a seat at the table in all the government conversations. And I think it's fair to say, it's just not our style really to be, I guess, that much out in the open, talking around, lobbying governments. We've actually chosen to do that behind closed doors with the government officials and trying to sway them to make sure that they are making the right decisions to support not just our business, but ultimately the whole of the travel industry. So, we are getting more and more positive noises. We're feeling most confident about Greece and Spain being the first destinations that these air corridors are going to have agreements signed for, and that's why they're the first destinations that we're going to be taking customers to. And we're very hopeful from that point forward that we'll start to see other destinations be opened up into the program. Expect the likes of Italy and Portugal, etc., to follow. But
only short haul, obviously, for the summer. You're not looking at any long haul.
I think it's fair to say long haul is probably going to take a little bit longer to come back. There's clearly more uncertainty, and you need those countries to lift their restrictions anyway to allow UK customers to travel. So it's definitely not a no, and we're reviewing that situation daily. But today, very much the focus is around actually that short and mid-haul program where we have a huge level of volume.
Okay, but presumably for winter, where some of your long haul flying is key for your winter program. So, do you think it would be back for then? You're hopeful that it'll be reinstated for winter?
Again, we're in conversations with the destinations. We've clearly got teams on the ground in all the major long haul destinations. So we have an ear to what's going on in those areas. Yes, I'm very confident of the winter program, and I'm hopeful of a kind of return towards the tail of summer as well. So and like you said, long haul, very important part of our program as well.
Yeah, with the Dreamliners, all that investment. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's hope that does happen. But of course, when people go back, their holidays presumably won't be like a normal TUI holiday. So it's obvious there's still going to be some restrictions in place. Now, I know you've already had some German customers going out to resorts, so you can perhaps talk with some experience, but can you give us an idea of the kinds of measures that you're going to be putting in place? And I'd be interested to know as well along the whole customer journey, from the airport, the aircraft, the transfer and then actually getting to resort. So what kind of changes are customers going to be seeing?
Yeah, I guess first off, we've introduced something called, the TUI holiday promise. And that's really a promise to all of our customers to give them assurance around the experience that they can get when they go into destination. And, crucially, one of the key parts of that holiday promise is we're not going to take customers to destinations where we're not confident they won't have a brilliant time. So that's really, really important. And I guess to come back to the point on quarantine, we're not going to take customers to destinations if they have to quarantine, when they get into destination. As far as what will happen when they are on their holiday and as parts of the journey, of course, there've got to be some changes to that. Of course, the airport and the airline experience will be slightly different to what customers have experienced in the past. The main parts of the airline experience will be the need to wear a face mask, which obviously the government communicated several days ago. And also, in an ideal world, we'll be asking customers to take less luggage into the cabin. We want to try and minimise some of the movements within the cabin, and that's the advice that EASA have given all of the airlines that they should be adhering to. Once you've then gone
sorry, Richard, can I just check? It could take a small bag, but they won't be able to take like a small suitcase. They wouldn't be able to have carry-on luggage as such.
Well, EASA's guidelines are you limit the amount of luggage that is taken into the cabin to limit the number of movements. So we're going to be asking customers to reduce the luggage that they do take into the cabin just to help support that as well.
Okay, sorry, carry on.
No, once it is very complicated. Once you then get onto the transfers, and then once you move into the destination, there will be some measures in place. But of course, these will be quite different depending on what the government restrictions are. So I think it's
in each country.
In each country, exactly. So there may be slightly different social distancing measures. And I guess across Europe, some of these are 1.5 meters and not 2 meters, and some of them are slightly different. And therefore, those will need to apply for parts of the holiday experience. But we don't expect customers will be wearing masks, etc. in the hotel. They'll be able to move freely. There might be some slight changes to the way in which restaurants will operate and swimming pools, etc. will operate. But again, we won't be sending customers on holiday if we don't think that they're going to have a fantastic experience. So, if for ever any reason that we think that's not going to be the case, we will be speaking to those customers and giving them an alternative or giving them other options. So,
because there is a quite a concern that there may be some kind of backlash or sort of raft of compensation claims if people have booked something and they get to the holiday and they're then going, well, it's not what I paid for, it's not quite what I was expecting, and they might come back and make a claim, and the people are worried there could be a real sort of influx of that kind of behavior going on. But you're saying that you're not going to allow that to happen because you will make sure that your holidays that you're offering really do give pretty much the experience that they're expecting.
Yeah, I think there's 2 points really, Lucy. The first is we've been really flexible with our terms for customers. So, I think we're the only major operator out there that actually gave customers free amendments all the way through for bookings, all the way through the peak season. So we're really aware, particularly for families, particularly uncertain around schooling, etc. What was going to happen to the holiday. So all the way up till the end of August, we've allowed customers to amend their holiday for free. And therefore, what I think that does is it makes sure those people that are very most nervous around the experience have been able to do that without any cost. And therefore, what we know or what we believe is that the customers that are still have a live booking for this summer are those that actually have researched and they understand where there will be some slight differences, particularly to the transport part of their experience. But yes, as I said, we're not going to be putting customers into hotels or into experiences where we don't believe they're going to have a fantastic holiday. So I'm not concerned that there's going to be a huge compensation backlash, because I believe the teams will have got it right and will make sure that we'll only be taking holidays into destinations where they're going to have a great experience.
So some changes around possibly transfers, maybe how you feed people, maybe I guess there's been talk about, removing buffets, but there's also been, reports of screens having to go up on beaches between loungers. There's been talks of not being able to use pools. So is that all scaremongering? Is that, is that the kind of thing that we're not actually going to see?
Yeah, I don't believe we're going to see that. And I think, you know, if we're honest, because of how capacities will be slightly suppressed, it's very unlikely, you know, you're going to see resorts at anywhere near the capacities that they should have been, and therefore that naturally is going to create space, and that's going to create the opportunity for people to naturally socially distance. So yeah, I really don't think any of those things that you've just mentioned are actually going to be a reality.
Okay, good to hear. And the program that you're starting with, is it largely around your own hotels? Obviously, you've made a lot of investment over the years trying to really control your program with your own hotels. Is it going to be that, you know, in your own property so that you can control it better, or are you using some sort of third-party suppliers as well?
Yeah, it's definitely not limited just to our own hotels. Obviously, our strategy with our own hotels have been very successful. But that's only a proportion of the hotels that we offer to customers. So no, it's definitely not going to be limited to those hotels. And we've got many bookings in hotels, in third-party hotels as well. And, you know, that is a critically important part of the program that, you know, we've really built up over the last 20 years, that's been driven through customer demand for the most popular destinations and the most popular hotels. So yeah, that will definitely be part of the program as we return, and will continue to be part of the program in the future.
Okay, and just, I know we're talking about the short term, and it's crucially important that you get something of this summer, and we understand that. But in terms of looking longer term, and the reports that people say, you know, there might be a second wave, or, you know, there might be another virus, you know, the new era that we're living in, does that, you know, lead TUI to think that it has to change its model, or its sort of how you run things? I mean, do you think you might be changing things in the longer term in terms of product mix or anything like that?
You know, one of the things that we will always do at TUI is just continually review our model, continually review the performance of each of the parts of the business. So that's something that we would be doing anyway. I think at the moment, you know, we're very confident about next year. Actually, if I look at the bookings for summer 21, you know, they are extremely strong. Clearly, part of that is boosted by people that unfortunately haven't been able to go on holiday this year. But actually, if you look at the underlying gross bookings, taking out all of those that have amended, they are really strong and well ahead of last year anyway. So it gives me great confidence that the underlying business, particularly from next year onwards, is looking very, very strong indeed.
And are there any trends in those new bookings, Richard? I mean, are people just going back to where they always went, or are you seeing any kind of change in consumer behaviour or demand?
It's really interesting. So if you look at all of the customers that are amending, probably 85 to 90% have just rebooked almost exactly the same holiday that they were planning to go on. In terms of the rest of our kind of gross booking profile, it's actually pretty evenly spread. So obviously it's all the key destinations, Greece, Turkey, Spain, etc. But within that, all the hauls are performing well. So long haul's looking strong as well. So there's nothing that looks particularly different next year.
Really?
What you would see in a typical season booking curve, other than the bookings are looking that much stronger.
I just find it interesting because I've done lots of these interviews, and people are saying, well, people are going to be looking for more exclusive stuff and more private stuff, and they might travel less, but the one holiday they go on will be, you know, give them more space and privacy and things like that. But actually, in the mass market, you're saying that really people just want to get away, and they're sort of booking, booking, as you say, strong bookings for next year, but to very similar what they were doing previously.
Yeah, if there's one thing that maybe stands out a little bit is it looks like people are booking slightly longer holidays, which I think makes sense as well. And we'd already started to see that trend change from 2019 into 2020, and that looks like that's continuing. So people making sure that when they do go on that holiday, they've got a decent amount of time. But of course, with our program, you know, there's huge breadth as well. So people can pick from a self-catering and a quite private hotel to a larger all-inclusive hotel. So they've got
but you haven't seen a real uplift in sort of self-catering and more private accommodation.
No, not particularly. Like I said, it pretty much is very similar to the normal pattern we'd see, other than the fact the bookings are very, very strong pretty much across the piece.
You're going to have enough availability for 2021.
I hope so.
That'll be the reverse problem of this year, won't it?
It will be.
Okay, well, nice problem to have. All right, I'm conscious of time, but I just want to talk about some other types of restructuring. Obviously, you made an announcement in your French business about closing all your own shops in France. So I wondered if there's any implications really for the UK market. You haven't reopened your shops yet in the UK. So I wonder if you could just talk about that, like when you're planning to do that, and if you're planning to reopen all of them, or if you may choose to keep some of them permanently closed.
So the plans in retail are, I believe, by the end of July, we'll have about 50% of all of the stores back open. So it'll be a bit of a phased basis, but that's the plan, to kind of reopen those stores. I think we've got another 1,000 people starting work very soon, and that will take us to about 2,000 people overall by maybe about mid-July, and that's about
out of how many though, Richard?
That'll be about 50%. Yeah, so that'll be about 50%. So it's a bit of a phased basis. We're going to be opening up the very biggest stores first, because clearly they're the stores that are the easiest to have social distancing for customers. Obviously, we've got a complete range of stores from very small to very large. So we need to do that in quite a considered and phased basis. But it's really important for those customers that being in a retail store is important too. And as at any point, we're constantly reviewing, the locations of our stores and where that makes sense. So, those plans and those reviews are kind of ongoing, but very much the focus is about a phased basis of reopening those stores to serve our customers.
But is the plan to I think we've got, how many stores have you got? 350 or so?
No, it's closer to 600.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, apologies.
Yeah.
So will you open all of them? Is that the plan, to reopen them all at some point?
I think, to be fair, we have to review in a post crisis, post virus world, exactly whether that is the reality, if that would be the right decision going forward. So the plans very much is to open them on a phased basis. As I said, we need to review that on an ongoing basis, how that rephasing of the opening goes.
Okay. I'm not getting a definitive answer, but that's fine. I know it's you've got to look at how things pan out. And the other thing was your announcement yesterday in your German business about trimming back your airline. So again, as you just said, in a post-COVID world, demand is clearly going to be less for a while. So is there any plans for your airline, the size of your operation?
I think it's fair to say that the airline at the moment actually fits the business that we see coming in over the next medium to long term. So again, it's an area that as a business that needs to be lean and efficient to make sure we keep costs down and therefore keep prices down for customers, we have to continually review. There's no immediate plans to kind of change the size of that in the UK business. And as I said, with bookings for next year looking very, very positive, we're going to need every single one of those aircraft. So, it's important that we just continue to keep reviewing the situation, because as you said, Lucy, whilst today things may look positive and we're here to talk about restarting and that looks great, this has obviously changed the world in which we live in and changed business. So I don't think you can take anything for granted, and it needs to be very carefully considered on an ongoing basis.
Well, and just because, I'm not aware of how things are in your other markets so closely, but, most businesses are having to, I think the word they're using is right size their business. And we've seen, consultations starting. We've seen people having to sort of reduce their programs. And it just seems inconceivable that any business would be able to continue operating at the moment, and particularly one of your size, at exactly the same levels as it was before, albeit we hope it comes back eventually. But I just wondered, given what we've seen in your other markets, how then the UK, would be treated.
Yeah, of course, we announced a few weeks ago a need to kind of reduce costs by 30%. Fritz came out and said that in an announcement. And therefore, each of the parts of the TUI group are reviewing how they best do that. That process hasn't been completed yet, so there's nothing I can really share on what that means for the UK. But like I said, it's about being an efficient and lean business in whatever the new world looks like. And I guess the challenge from the virus has maybe exacerbated that. But we've been long on the path of moving to be more of a digital business, and therefore making sure that we're at the forefront and using technology to serve customers and source hotels and flying. I guess we're just looking to accelerate some parts of the plan, but it's too early just to talk around what that actually means for the UK.
When would we expect that? Is there there's a consultation presumably going on at the moment? So when is that up?
I don't have the dates of when our plans will be completed. So yeah, unfortunately, I can't share that, Lucy. So.
Okay, all right. Well, look, I'm conscious of your time. Final question. Whenever there's a downturn, whenever there's a crisis, there is always opportunity. And I imagine clever people at TUI, I'm sure you're looking at all sorts of possible opportunities. So is there anything that you think from this situation that, could come out that might be a silver lining?
I think, there's always those kind of projects that sit on the side of areas that we look into. And I guess a great example of that was River Cruise, which unfortunately we weren't able to launch earlier this year, but very much planning to launch that by the end of this calendar year. So that's something that we've been working on for a while, and that was a part of a travel that we really see a great opportunity in. There's maybe a couple of things that I've had my eye on that we've had to just put on the back burner because the focus at the moment, like I said, is about getting the program back up and taking customers back up on holidays. And I think that's where all of our efforts will be very much in the short and medium term, and making sure that they have fantastic experiences. And if there's anything news come out, you'll be sure the first to hear about it.
I better be. All right. Well, listen, Richard, it's been fantastic to hear from you. We really hope that your restart does go ahead on July the 11th as planned. Let's hope the government plays ball, and everything that you're hearing, and you say you've got a seat at the table. That's very interesting to hear. And I guess you wouldn't be announcing this today if you weren't confident and positive about that. So thank you for your time, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, Lucy. Good to talk to you. Take care.